I'm Mark Peterson. 28 years old and living in Boise, Idaho, felt like I had it all figured out. My days were a comfortable rhythm. Up before dawn, a quick run along the Boise River Greenbelt, then off to the architecture firm where I sketched dreams into blueprints. I loved my job. There was something deeply satisfying about seeing a structure rise from lines on a page, knowing you had a hand in shaping something tangible, something that would stand for years. My evenings were usually spent with Alex, my boyfriend of 4 years. We lived in a cozy little bungalow just off Capitol Boulevard, a place we'd poured our hearts and a good chunk of our savings into. We depainted the walls a calming sage green, picked out the furniture together, even debated for an entire week over the exact shade of gray for the bathroom tiles. It was our sanctuary, our future, or so I thought. Alex was a graphic designer, artistic and a little bit bohemian, the perfect counterbalance to my more structured, analytical mind. He had this infectious laugh that could fill a room and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he genuinely smiled. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and from the moment he complimented my terrible dad jokes, I was hooked. Our relationship wasn't perfect, no relationship ever is, but it felt solid. We talked about adopting someday, maybe getting a dog first, settling into a comfortable life, a life built on trust and mutual respect. And then there was David, my younger brother. He was 24, still finding his feet, hopping from one dead-end job to another. He'd always been a bit wild, a free spirit, and I, being the older, more responsible brother, had always felt a protective urge towards him. He lived in a small apartment across town, but he was always over at our place, raiding the fridge, crashing on the couch, or just hanging out while Alex and I watched movies. He and Alex got along great, too great it turns out. I used to joke that Alex liked David more than me, but it was just brotherly banter, nothing more, or so I believed. Looking back, the signs were probably there, faint whispers I chose to ignore. Alex was a little more distant, spending more time on his phone, less eager for our usual evening walks. David would sometimes seem awkward when I walked into a room, an almost imperceptible shift in his posture, a too quick glance away. I chalked it up to stress, to the general chaos of life. I was busy at work too, dealing with a particularly demanding client, and my mind was often elsewhere. Naive, blind, stupid. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon. Alex was supposedly at a client meeting, and I had taken an early lunch, craving a specific deli sandwich. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed David's beat-up sedan parked just out of sight, tucked behind our garage. Odd, I thought. He usually texted before dropping by. A knot of unease began to tighten in my stomach. I walked to the back door, the one we always used, key in hand. The moment I stepped inside, I heard it, not just voices, but sounds. Sounds that made my blood run cold. Sounds that were unmistakable, primal. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hands started to shake. I didn't want to believe it. I crept down the hallway, each step feeling like I was wading through quicksand. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly, hesitantly, as if by moving carefully I could somehow change what was on the other side. But I couldn't. There they were, Alex and David, on our bed, my bed. The bed Alex and I had picked out together. The bed where we'd shared so many moments, so many promises. They didn't see me at first, lost in their own horrifying embrace. The world tilted. The air left my lungs. A choked sound escaped my throat, a mix of disbelief and utter agony. They froze, pulling apart, eyes wide with terror as they finally saw me standing there, a witness to their betrayal. Alex's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. David just stared, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shame. "Mark," Alex whispered, his voice hoarse, broken. I couldn't speak. The words were stuck somewhere in my throat, tangled with a grief so profound it felt physical. I just stood there, staring at the two people I had loved and trusted more than anyone in the world, now reduced to a grotesque tableau of deceit. The images burned into my mind, searing, indelible. Alex tried to get up to reach for me, but I instinctively recoiled, taking a step back as if he were diseased. "Don't," I managed to rasp, the single word a raw wound. David finally found his voice. "Mark, I can explain." Explain what? How you two managed to rip my entire world apart in a single moment. How you trampled over years of loyalty, of love, of brotherhood. My vision blurred with tears, hot and furious. "Get out," I said, my voice rising, trembling with a fury I hadn't known I possessed. "Both of you, get out of my house." Alex looked utterly devastated, tears streaming down his face, but David just pulled on his clothes, avoiding my gaze. The silence in the room, thick with guilt and accusation, was deafening. They shuffled out, dressed quickly, and I heard the front door creak open and then slam shut. And just like that, they were gone, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my life. The house felt cold, empty, tainted. Every object, every piece of furniture seemed to mock me with its memory of happier times. I walked back into the bedroom, the smell of their betrayal still hanging in the air. I sank onto the floor, not on the bed, never on the bed, and curled into myself. The tears came, then a torrent of them, racking my body with sobs. Hours passed, I don't know how many. The sun set, casting long, mournful shadows across the room. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from both Alex and David, but I ignored them all. I couldn't, not yet, maybe never. The pain was immense, a crushing weight in my chest. But beneath the pain, a new feeling began to stir, cold and hard, a deep simmering rage. They had taken everything, my relationship, my trust, my sense of security, my family, in a way. They had violated the sanctity of my home, my sanctuary. And for what? A cheap thrill, a moment of weakness. It didn't matter, the betrayal was absolute. And in that moment, lying on my bedroom floor, surrounded by the ghosts of a life that was no longer mine, I knew one thing with chilling clarity. This wasn't just about feeling hurt. This was about making them feel it too. Every single atom of the pain they had inflicted, I would make them pay. Not just for me, but for the years of trust, for the dreams they shattered. This wasn't an ending. This was a beginning. Beginning of something dark, something I hadn't known I was capable of. Beginning of revenge. I'm Mark Peterson, and for 28 years my life in Boise, Idaho had been about as predictable as the sun rising over the Rockies. I had a decent job as a software developer, enough to keep my little two-bedroom house cozy and my fridge stocked. Weekends were for hiking the foothills, maybe catching a game with my buddies, and most importantly, spending time with Sarah. Sarah was everything. Or so I thought. We'd been together for 5 years. 5 years of shared laughter, quiet evenings on the couch, plans for the future that felt so real I could almost touch them. She was a kindergarten teacher, her patience endless, her smile as bright as the Idaho sun. I loved her warmth, her kindness, the way she made even the most mundane parts of life feel significant. We talked about marriage, about kids, about growing old together in this quiet corner of the world. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a steady, comforting fire that warmed my whole existence. And then there was Alex, my brother. He was 3 years younger than me, but we'd always been close. Growing up, he was my shadow, then my confidant. We shared secrets, skinned knees, and a bond that felt unbreakable. We didn't always agree, of course, but that was just part of being brothers. He was the charming one, the easygoing one, always ready with a joke or a distraction. He just moved back to Boise a few months ago after a stint in Portland, and I was genuinely thrilled to have him closer. We started a new tradition of Sunday dinners, rotating between my place, his, and our parents. Sarah loved those dinners too, always praising Alex's cooking, joking about his messy habits. It felt like our little family was finally complete, thriving. The first hint that something was wrong came subtly. Sarah started acting a little distant, a little preoccupied. I put it down to stress from work, or maybe just a new phase in our relationship. We all have those moments, right? I tried to be understanding, give her space, but also let her know I was there for her. Then came the bombshell. It was a Tuesday evening. I came home from work tired but looking forward to seeing Sarah. She was already there, sitting on the couch, her hands clasped in her lap. Her face was pale, her usual bright eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, guilt, my stomach tightened. "Mark," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "we need to talk." My heart hammered against my ribs. Those words, they never mean anything good. I sat beside her, taking her hand. It was cold. "What is it, love? Is everything okay?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but a tremor betrayed me. She took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on a spot on the wall behind me. "I'm pregnant, Mark." For a moment, the world tilted on its axis. Pregnant, my mind raced. We hadn't been actively trying, but we hadn't been strictly avoiding it either. It was always a someday thing, a baby, our baby. A wave of overwhelming emotion washed over me, shock, then a profound, terrifying joy. This was it, our future manifesting right now. "Sarah," I choked out, a smile spreading across my face despite the lingering confusion. "Oh my God, are you serious? That's incredible." I reached for her, ready to pull her into a celebratory hug, but she flinched, pulling her hand away. My smile faltered, the joy drained out of me, replaced by a cold dread. "What's wrong? Why aren't you happy?" Her eyes finally met mine, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. Not happiness, not even fear, but a deep, unbearable shame. "It's not yours, Mark," she said, the words barely audible, yet they hit me like a physical blow. The air left my lungs. My mind reeled, trying to process, to make sense of the impossible. "Not mine? How? Who?" A thousand questions screamed in my head, but only one found its way out. "What do you mean, not mine?" My voice was rough, unrecognizable. "Who else? Sarah, what are you talking about?" She started to cry, then soft, broken sobs that tore at something inside me. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I never meant for this to happen." "Who?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Tell me, Sarah, who is it?" She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. It was Alex. The name hung in the air, a poisonous vapor suffocating me. Alex, my brother, the man I trusted more than anyone besides her, the man I loved. It couldn't be. My mind rejected it utterly and completely. It was a sick joke, a nightmare. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, Sarah, that's not possible. You're lying." She opened her eyes, swollen and red. "I wish I was. It happened a few times when you were working late. We were drinking, and one thing led to another. I know it's no excuse. I'm so sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry." The details she offered, sparse as they were, painted a horrifying picture. My girlfriend, my brother in my house, perhaps even in my bed, while I was out working, building a future for us. The betrayal was a physical ache, a searing pain in my chest that made it hard to breathe. It wasn't just Sarah's infidelity, it was Alex's. The two people I loved and trusted most in the world had conspired, had broken something fundamental within me. I stood up, needing distance, needing air. The comfortable living room, filled with memories of us, suddenly felt suffocating. I paced, my thoughts a frantic, chaotic mess. "Pregnant by Alex, my brother, my girlfriend." The words echoed in my skull, a cruel, mocking chant. "Get out," I said, my voice low and trembling. "Get out of my house, Sarah, now." She looked up at me, her face a mask of despair. "Mark, please let me explain. I know I messed up, but there's nothing to explain," I shouted, the dam finally breaking. "You slept with my brother, you're pregnant with his child. What explanation could there possibly be for that? Get out." She didn't argue further. She slowly got up, grabbed her purse, and walked out the front door, leaving me alone in the shattered remnants of my life. Silence that followed her departure was deafening, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own heart. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, the reality of it all sinking in, cold and sharp. My girlfriend, my brother, my future gone, and a baby. His baby. The first thing I did after Sarah left was call Alex. My fingers trembled as I dialed, a mix of rage and disbelief coursing through me. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful, oblivious. "Hey, big bro." Everything all right? No, Alex, I spat, the words laced with venom. Nothing is all right. What the hell did you do? There was a pause, a beat of silence that stretched into an eternity. Then his voice softer, hesitant. What are you talking about, Mark? Sarah, I see. Sarah just told me everything, you and her and the baby. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear his shallow breath on the other end, then a sigh, a pathetic, defeated sigh. Mark, I'm so sorry, I messed up. Big time. Sorry. Sorry didn't even begin to cover it. Sorry didn't fix the gaping hole in my chest, didn't erase the image of them together, didn't make the baby disappear. Don't you ever, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, don't you ever call me big bro again. Don't you ever contact me, don't you ever come near me or my house again. You're dead to me, Alex, you and her. I hung up before he could respond, my hand still shaking as I slammed the phone down on the table. The anger, hot and raw, pulsed through me, but beneath it was a deep, aching emptiness. My family, my future, my entire world had just been obliterated in one devastating conversation. I was alone, and the only thing I felt was a cold, burning desire for something, anything, to make them pay. My name is Mark Peterson, and for 28 years I thought I had a pretty good handle on life. Not perfect, mind you, but good. I lived in Boise, Idaho, a place I'd always called home, a city nestled by the foothills where the air was clean and the people generally decent. I worked as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company, a job I enjoyed because it combined my love for problem-solving with the satisfaction of seeing tangible things built from the ground up. I liked the smell of sawdust and fresh concrete, the sound of hammers ringing, the organized chaos of a busy site. It was honest work, and it paid the bills, allowing me to buy a small, comfortable house on the west side, with a decent backyard for future barbecues and maybe one day a dog. My life felt like a carefully constructed building, each brick laid with purpose. The strongest support beam, I believed, was Sarah. We met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue, a classic Boise summer evening with string lights and the scent of grilled burgers. She had this laugh that was like wind chimes, light and airy, and eyes the color of the summer sky. We clicked almost instantly, sharing a love for hiking the Table Rock trails, trying out new craft breweries downtown, and just lazy evenings on the couch watching old movies. A year ago, I'd proposed to her on top of Schaefer Butte, with the entire valley spread out below us, twinkling with lights. She said yes, of course, her voice choked with happy tears, and for that moment I truly believed I was the luckiest man alive. We were planning the wedding for next spring, picturing a modest ceremony at a local vineyard, surrounded by our closest friends and family. And then there was Kevin, my brother. He was 2 years younger than me, a wild card to my steady hand. Where I was methodical, Kevin was impulsive. Where I planned, he winged it. Growing up, we've been inseparable despite our differences. We built treehouses, played endless hours of video games, and navigated the awkwardness of adolescence side by side. As adults, our bond had shifted, matured. He was still the first person I called when I had good news and the one I leaned on when things got rough. Kevin was supposed to be my best man, a role he'd enthusiastically accepted, already making jokes about his speech. He was a constant presence in our lives, often stopping by the house unannounced, always welcome, always family. Sarah liked him too, or so I thought. They had a comfortable, easygoing rapport full of lighthearted teasing and shared laughs. It felt right, like my two favorite people got along perfectly, cementing the foundation of my happy life even further. Everything was going according to plan. The wedding invites were ordered, the caterer booked, and Sarah was narrowing down dress choices. Life was good, almost too good. Maybe that's why I missed the cracks forming in the foundation. Subtle at first, like hairline fractures in concrete. Sarah started becoming more protective of her phone, always keeping it face down, quick to snatch it if I even glanced near it. She'd disappear for extended periods, claiming to be running errands or meeting friends, but her explanations often felt vague, just a little off. I told myself it was stress from wedding planning, maybe pre-wedding jitters. She was a meticulous planner, and I figured she was just trying to manage everything perfectly. I tried to be understanding, offering to help more, to take some of the burden off her shoulders. She'd just smile wanly and say she had it handled, a dismissive tone I hadn't noticed before. One Tuesday evening after a long day at work, I came home to an empty house. Sarah had said she was meeting a friend for dinner, something about a new Italian place downtown. I was tired, ready for a quiet night in. I tossed my keys on the counter, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and headed for the living room. That's when I saw it. Sarah's tablet, usually tucked away in her bag, was sitting on the coffee table. The screen was on, glowing softly in the dim light. A notification banner was across the top, an incoming message from Kevin. My breath hitched. It wasn't the notification itself that sent a chill down my spine. It was the content of the message. Can't wait to see you again tonight, my love. Missed you since last night. My hand started to tremble, the beer bottle clattering against the glass table. Last night, Sarah had told me she was working late on a big presentation. I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my brain. No, it had to be a mistake, a joke between them. But the words were too intimate, too possessive. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread. I picked up the tablet, my fingers fumbling. My gaze darted to the message thread, dread coiling in my gut. There were more pages and pages of them. Pet names, inside jokes, references to stolen moments, to late nights, to secrets kept from me. And then I saw the photo. A picture dated 2 weeks ago, clearly taken in a hotel room. Sarah, her hair disheveled, her eyes soft and dreamy, was nestled against Kevin's bare chest, his arm wrapped around her. They were smiling, a genuine, intimate happiness that should have been reserved for us. For her and me, the world tilted, the air in my lungs turned to ash. I felt a visceral lurch, like I'd been punched in the gut repeatedly. My vision blurred around the edges, the cheerful decor of our living room melting into a grotesque blur. It wasn't just a message, it was proof, undeniable, sickening proof. My fiancée, the woman I was going to marry, the woman I loved more than anything, had betrayed me, and not just with anyone, but with my own brother. The man who was supposed to stand by my side on my wedding day. The man I trusted implicitly. I sank onto the couch, the tablet still clutched in my trembling hands, its glowing screen a beacon of my shattered reality. The weight of the betrayal was crushing, suffocating. Every shared laugh between them, every casual touch, every time I dismissed my fleeting unease as paranoia, it all came crashing down, replaying in my mind like a horrifying highlight reel. Past 5 years, the entire foundation of our relationship seemed to crumble into dust. How long had this been going on? How many times had they lied to my face? How many times had they laughed at my expense behind my back? The questions swirled in my head, a venomous current. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time ceased to have meaning. I just sat there numb, the cold beer long forgot beside me. When I finally heard the front door open, followed by Sarah's light footsteps, I didn't move. My body felt heavy, rooted to the spot by a potent mix of disbelief and a raw, primal rage. She walked into the living room, humming a little tune, her purse slung over her shoulder. Her eyes landed on me, then on the tablet in my hand, and her humming stopped. The color drained from her face, leaving her ashen. The light-hearted mask she wore shattered, revealing the terror beneath. "Mark," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her gaze darted from me to the tablet and back again, a flicker of desperate hope in her eyes that I hadn't seen anything. But it was too late. I slowly lifted the tablet, turning the screen towards her, displaying the damning photograph. Her breath hitched. Her eyes welled up instantly, tears spilling over, but they were not tears of remorse, not yet. They were tears of getting caught. "Explain," I said, my voice hollow, devoid of any emotion. It wasn't a question. It was a demand, a desperate plea for her to somehow undo what I was seeing, to make it all a terrible nightmare. But even as I said it, I knew there was no explanation, no undoing. My building, my carefully constructed life, had just been demolished, and the wreckage was all around me. Mark Peterson, and for 28 years, Boise, Idaho had been my entire world. Not just the physical landscape of rugged mountains and the serpentine Boise River, but the very rhythm of life here. It was a predictable, comforting beat, one I'd come to rely on. I worked as a software developer, tucked away in a small, unassuming tech company downtown. My days were a methodical dance of code, logic, and problem-solving. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and left me enough time for what truly mattered, the outdoors. Give me a trailhead in a few hours, and I was in my element, hiking until my calves screamed or casting a line into a quiet eddy, the only sound the gentle hum of the water. My life to me was good, simple perhaps to an outsider, but deeply fulfilling. I was the reliable one, the steady hand, the guy who always showed up. Friends knew they could count on me. My parents, God bless them, often said I was the least amount of trouble they'd ever had. I liked that. I liked stability, the quiet confidence that came from knowing where you stood. Maybe I was a little too trusting, a little too quick to see the best in people. That's what they'd say later anyway, that's what she would say. Her name was Sarah. Sarah Hayes. She'd walked into my life 3 years ago, a burst of sunshine and laughter in a coffee shop downtown, and ever since my world had felt brighter. She was a kindergarten teacher, her eyes always sparkling with an innate kindness, her hair the color of autumn leaves. We de-clicked instantly. Our first date was an impromptu hike up Table Rock where we talked for hours, sharing dreams and silly stories, and I knew with a certainty I'd never felt before that she was different. She was the one. Our relationship was everything I'd ever imagined. Easy, supportive, filled with a quiet understanding that didn't need words. We talked about everything, our jobs, our families, our hopes for the future. We'd spend evenings curled on the couch, watching old movies or planning our next weekend adventure. We'd even started talking about getting a place together, maybe even a ring. I picked out a few ideas, tucked them away in my mind for the right moment. I trusted her implicitly, completely. She was my confidant, my best friend, my future. She completed me in a way I hadn't known I was incomplete. Then there was David, my younger brother by 2 years. David was different. Where I was steady, he was a storm. Where I was predictable, he was a chaotic whirlwind. He'd always been the one to live on the edge, the one with the grand ideas that rarely panned out, the one who needed bailing out more often than not. He'd jump from job to job, chasing fleeting passions, always a little short on rent, always needing a loan that never quite made its way back to my wallet. I'd loved him, of course. He was my brother. Despite our differences, despite the headaches he sometimes caused, there was an unbreakable bond. I'd always felt a sense of responsibility for him, a quiet obligation to look out for him, even when he seemed determined to make his own life harder. He'd been living with me for the past 6 months, crashing in my spare room after his latest big idea. A cryptocurrency trading scheme had spectacularly imploded, leaving him effectively homeless and deeply in debt. It was a temporary arrangement, he'd promised, just until he got back on his feet. I begrudgingly agreed. It was family after all. What else was I going to do? The unease started subtly, a low hum beneath the surface of my otherwise contented life. Small things at first. Sarah started texting more, her phone always clutched in her hand, a faint smile playing on her lips that wasn't quite for me. She'd become a little more distant, a little less available for our usual evening talks. When I'd ask, she'd blame stress from work or tell me she was just tired. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Then it was David. He was suddenly less around, but when he was, there was a new secretive air about him. He'd leave his phone face down, jump when I walked into the room, or finish conversations abruptly. He'd started dressing a little sharper too, wearing cologne, which was out of character for the guy who usually smelled of stale pizza and desperation. I dismissed it, telling myself he was finally trying to get his life together, maybe even seeing someone new. I was happy for him, genuinely. But the subtle hum began to grow louder, morphing into a dull ache in my gut. Sarah would sometimes mention David in conversations, a little too casually. David said the new coffee shop on State Street is great, or David thinks that new band is overhyped. Nothing overtly suspicious, but enough to make me pause. She'd never really paid much attention to David before. Their interactions had always been polite but brief. Now they seemed to share an invisible understanding, a silent language that excluded me. One Tuesday evening, everything shattered. I got off work early, a rare occurrence, and decided to surprise Sarah with dinner. I stopped by her apartment, the one we talked about sharing, a bouquet of her favorite wildflowers in one hand and a bag of takeout from her favorite Thai place in the other. I had a key, of course. We were practically living together already. The moment I stepped inside, the silence hit me first. Not the comfortable silence of an empty apartment, but the thick, heavy silence of a secret. The air felt charged, and a wave of nausea washed over me. Then I heard it, a faint murmur of voices from her bedroom. A low laugh, unmistakably Sarah's, followed by a deeper rumble that could only be David's. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread. No. Couldn't be, not Sarah, not David. My mind raced, searching for any innocent explanation. Maybe he was helping her with something, fixing a leaky faucet, moving furniture, but the whispers, the hushed tones, it felt wrong. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn around, to pretend I hadn't heard, hadn't seen. But I couldn't. My feet, as if moved by an unseen force, carried me down the short hallway, each step a hammer blow against my chest. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly, my hand trembling so hard I nearly dropped the flowers, and then I saw them. Sarah, her hair disheveled, wrapped in a sheet, David, shirtless, sitting on the edge of her bed. They looked up, their faces a mask of instant horror, caught in the act. The air was thick with their betrayal. The flowers slipped from my grasp, hitting the hardwood floor with a soft thud, the vibrant petals scattering like confetti over a coffin. What is this? My voice was a strangled whisper, barely recognizable as my own. Sarah's face crumpled. Mark, I can explain. Her words were weak, flimsy, like a tissue in a hurricane. David, for once, had nothing to say. He just sat there, eyes wide, looking like a deer caught in headlights. Shame, or maybe just fear, flickered in his eyes. Explain what, Sarah? My voice rose, raw with a pain so sharp it stole my breath. Explain why you're in bed with my brother. Explain why my entire life just imploded in front of my eyes. The next hour was a blur of accusations, tears, and hollow confessions. Sarah sobbed, muttering apologies and excuses, claiming it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she didn't know how it happened. David, when he finally found his voice, muttered something about being lonely, about not meaning to hurt me, about how it just happened, like a spilled drink, not a deliberate, calculated act of profound betrayal. How long? I demanded, the question tearing from my throat. Sarah hesitated, then mumbled, a few months. For a few months they had been lying to me behind my back in my own city, under my own roof, practically. Every late night, every whispered phone call, every distant look, all the subtle shifts I dismissed as normal relationship quirks. It all clicked into place, forming a monstrous, agonizing picture. I don't remember leaving. I just remember the cold air hitting my face as I stumbled out of her apartment, the scent of her perfume, now sickeningly mingled with the faint smell of David's cologne, clinging to me like a shroud. I walked aimlessly for hours, the vibrant streets of Boise blurring into an indistinguishable smear of lights and shadows. My world, the one I had built with such care and trust, was gone. Shattered. The calls started almost immediately. Sarah pleading, crying, David leaving pathetic, stammering voicemails. My parents, then my sister Emily. Emily, bless her heart, was furious on my behalf. She wanted to drive down from Spokane immediately to confront them both. My parents, though, were different. Mark, son, are you sure you're thinking clearly? My mom had said, her voice laced with an uncomfortable blend of pity and something else I couldn't quite place. David's been going through a rough patch. He's always been a bit lost. Maybe Sarah was just trying to help him feel better. Help him feel better. The words echoed in my head, a grotesque parody of compassion. Help him feel better by screwing my girlfriend. The betrayal wasn't just from them, it was from my own family, subtly shifting the blame, looking for excuses. My dad, ever the pragmatist, had suggested I consider what my part in this might be. My part was loving and trusting too much. This is a family matter, Mark, my dad had said, his voice firm. We need to handle this as a family. Don't do anything you'll regret. Regret, all I felt was a searing, consuming rage. They wanted me to sweep it under the rug, to forgive and forget, to preserve the family unit, no matter the cost to my own soul. But I couldn't. The image of Sarah and David in that room was seared into my mind, a brand of humiliation and agony. It had cut me deeper than I thought possible. Every memory, every shared laugh, every promise we'd made was now tainted, poisoned by their deceit. I packed Sarah's things myself, methodically, numbly, stuffing them into boxes and leaving them outside her door. There was no grand scene, no final argument, just a quiet, resolute severance. I changed the locks on my apartment, disconnected my phone, and for a few days I disappeared. I didn't answer calls, didn't check messages. I just existed, a hollow shell of the man I used to be. The pain was a physical weight, crushing me, making it hard to breathe. The humiliation burned, a constant flush of heat on my skin, and beneath it all a cold, hard ember began to glow. A desire for something more than just healing, a desire for them to feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. This wasn't just about a broken heart, this was about a fundamental breach of trust, a desecration of everything I held dear. My girlfriend, my brother, my family's dismissive reactions. I was isolated, adrift in a sea of betrayal. But as the initial shock began to recede, a new feeling took root, cold and resolute. I wouldn't just survive this. I would make them understand the depth of their transgression. I would make them pay. The quiet, reliable Mark Peterson was gone. In his place, something new was stirring, something dangerous. The last month had been a blurry, agonizing stretch of time. Days bled into nights, and the only constant was the dull ache in my chest, a constant reminder of the gaping wound carved out by David and Liam. My once vibrant life in Boise, filled with weekend hikes in the foothills and lively evenings at the local breweries, had been reduced to a monotone existence. I was Mark Peterson, 28, and I felt like a ghost haunting my own apartment. I'd cut them both off, a drastic, painful severing that left me feeling amputated. My phone, once buzzing with messages from both of them, was eerily silent. My parents, caught in the crossfire, were hesitant to take sides. Family is family, Mark, my mom had pleaded, her voice thick with unasked questions. Are you sure you want to burn all these bridges? She didn't understand. How could she? The betrayal wasn't just an infidelity. It was a perversion, a twist of the knife from two people I trusted with my very soul. I tried to pick up the pieces to find some semblance of my old self. I went to work mechanical and detached, fielding concerned glances from colleagues who sensed something was deeply wrong. I'd sit in my living room, the quiet pressing in on me, staring at the empty space where photos of David and me once hung. The memories once cherished were now tainted, poisoned. Every laugh, every touch, every shared dream felt like a lie, a carefully constructed illusion. Then the whispers started. First, a casual mention from an acquaintance at the gym, then a hushed conversation I overheard at a coffee shop. Did you hear about David and Liam? Someone asked. My ears pricked up, my heart hammering against my ribs. Yeah, I heard they're together now, and get this, she's pregnant. My mind reeled. It couldn't be. David was gay. Liam was gay. The words didn't make sense, a jumbled mess of impossibility. I dismissed it, convinced it was a cruel rumor, a way for people to add more drama to my already shattered life. But the whispers persisted, growing louder, more insistent. Eventually, the truth, ugly and undeniable, clawed its way into my awareness. Liam, my brother, my younger brother whom I had always protected, had been seeing a woman secretly. And David, my ex-boyfriend, had not only slept with Liam, but had also gotten involved with this woman, even though he was supposed to be with me. She was Liam's on-again, off-again girlfriend, Sarah, and she was pregnant with Liam's baby, or David's, or God help them, both of theirs. The absurdity of it all was almost comical if it hadn't been so devastating. My brother, who had stolen my partner, was now entangled in a web of deceit and impending fatherhood with a woman he'd been cheating on, while my ex, the man who had promised me forever, was apparently involved in this mess too. It was a circus, a grotesque spectacle of their own making. My initial reaction was a surge of bitter satisfaction. They were reaping what they sowed, a tangled mess of their own creation. But beneath that, a deeper, colder realization settled in. This wasn't justice, it was just more pain, more chaos, and I was still caught in the periphery. I realized then that my revenge couldn't be about their suffering. It had to be about my healing, my liberation. I decided to reclaim my narrative. Not through confrontation, not through public shaming, but through a quiet, devastating act of truth. I started writing, not a furious rant, but a calm, factual account of what had happened from my perspective. I detailed my relationship with David, the growing distance, the strange secrecy surrounding Liam. I laid out the timeline, the moments of discovery, the soul-crushing realization. I didn't assign blame or resort to name-calling. I simply presented the facts, raw and unadorned. I focused on my feelings, my journey through the heartbreak, my decision to cut ties. I titled it, The Aftermath of a Double Betrayal. I didn't publish it immediately. I sat on it for weeks, refining it, stripping away any lingering anger, leaving only the stark reality of my experience. I knew deep down that this wasn't about hurting them. It was about freeing myself from the burden of their lies, about setting the record straight, not for their benefit, but for mine. It was about closing that chapter and truly moving on. When I felt ready, I posted it. Not on social media for the world to see, but in a private group, a small online community for individuals who had experienced similar betrayals. It was a space where empathy was abundant and judgment was absent. I didn't want public spectacle. I wanted understanding, validation, and a sense of shared humanity. The responses were immediate and overwhelming. Messages poured in, filled with support, solidarity, and stories of their own pain. You are so strong, one person wrote. Thank you for sharing your truth, another said. Your courage is inspiring. It was a balm to my raw wounds, a confirmation that I wasn't alone, that my pain was valid, and that healing was possible. I heard, through the grapevine, that my post had eventually found its way back to David and Liam. Not through direct confrontation, but through the ripple effect of small communities and shared experiences. I heard about the arguments, the accusations, the unraveling of their already precarious situation with Sarah. The she's pregnant became who's the father, and the messy truth began to spill out into their own lives. Their circus was now fully exposed, not by my hand directly, but by the undeniable gravity of their own actions. I hadn't sought to destroy them, but by speaking my truth, I had inadvertently accelerated their self-destruction. And in that there was a quiet, profound satisfaction. I didn't gloat, I didn't feel vindictive. I felt, for the first time in a long time, free. The weight lifted, the ache in my chest subsided, replaced by a sense of calm resilience. I started going on those hikes again, the crisp Idaho air filling my lungs, clearing my head. I reconnected with old friends, found new passions, and slowly, painstakingly rebuilt my life. My revenge wasn't about their pain, but about my peace. It was about owning my story, reclaiming my agency, and stepping out of the shadow of their betrayal. The final twist, the true poetic justice, wasn't just their messy reality, it was my serenity. I was Mark Peterson, 28, living in Boise, Idaho, and I was finally truly moving on. They could keep their tangled lives. I had my own, and it was finally mine again, unburdened and open to new possibilities. The baby, whether Liam's or David's, was their problem to solve. My problem was solved the moment I chose my own healing over their destruction. And that in itself was the greatest revenge of all. My story wasn't about what they did to me, but what I chose to do for myself. And I chose to live and thrive, and that was enough, more than enough. I'm Mark Peterson, 28, from Boise, Idaho. For months, betrayal gnawed at me. My world, built around Sarah, crumbled when I learned she was pregnant with her own brother's child. This unthinkable truth left me in a fog. My family urged forgiveness, unable to grasp how it rewrote every memory. The last month has been different, quiet, no Sarah, no her brother David. The no contact I pushed for brought a strange peace. I hear she's keeping the baby, a girl named Bella. Bitter pill, knowing that innocent child represents the ultimate violation. No grand revenge can mend my shattered trust. The world, in its cruel way, has already dealt its hand. My revenge, I've realized, isn't punishing them. It's healing myself. It's waking up in my Boise apartment, free from that suffocating weight. It's the quiet satisfaction of rebuilding my life piece by piece. They are isolated, bound by a secret that will haunt them, a constant reminder of their choices. I am free. Free to breathe, free to find a future untainted by their treachery. The pain still echoes, but it no longer defines me. My justice is my peace. I'm Mark Peterson, and Boise used to feel like a cage. They tried to break me, but I found my strength. Today I bought the old diner, the one they laughed about me wanting. It's mine now. Their whispers echo no more, just the sizzle of the grill and the promise of a future they'll never touch, and their world crumbled. Mine just began.